Welcome back and thanks for staying with the SABC News channel. It is the breaking news story this hour. The Electoral Court has found that it has no jurisdiction to consider the application in the ANC versus IEC matter. The court found that the decision that the ANC has sought to bring the court for intervention is an incorrect one. The court says the ANC's application to bring the matter straight to this particular sitting would undermine the provisions of the Electoral Act that prescribe that a matter should be ventilated fully through the Electoral Commission before it's brought to court. We got you a sense of what legally this means, but let's get you an idea of the political ramifications. Bring in political analyst now, Professor Bheki Mngomezulu, who joins us via our video link. Prof, lovely to chat to you. Thanks for your time and patience. It comes as no surprise that there were scenes of jubilation from supporters of the MK party outside court. And of course, it would be no surprise that this is also seen as a major blow for the ANC.
Absolutely, Putayanda. And I think that this should be a lesson going forward, that on the eve of an election, the best you can do is to make sure that you put all your resources in terms of canvassing for the election and positioning yourself to retain your position if you are the governing party, or to contest for the position if you are an aspirant political party that wants to assume power. In this case, some of us have been arguing all along that this court case was in fact unnecessary, given the fact that we are dealing with logistical issues without necessarily arguing about the substance of the matter. Even the case that is going to be heard tomorrow, you are saying that you don't want a party to use something similar to yours, but then you have the AIC, which was allowed to participate in the election. You have the EFF, which also has a spear. So if the issue is the spear, then challenge all the parties that have a spear. So I think that this will be a lesson to the leadership of the organization, the governing party, so that at least they can strategize and know which battles to fight and which ones to ignore.
Yeah, and generally the ANC takes a stance that they don't want to speak about their breakaway parties, at least in the infancy of these organizations. I suppose the thinking there is that they don't want to give credence to those organizations by using their platform and whatever influence to shine a spotlight on them. But in a stroke of irony, by the ANC taking the MK party to court in this way, they couldn't have given the MK party a whole lot more attention and spotlight in the lead up to the elections.
I'm glad it's you, Putayanda, who is saying this, because when I say it, people think that it's because I hate the ANC. I don't know where they get that from. If they knew the history of where some of us come from, they wouldn't be making those kinds of insinuations. The reality here is, if you don't tell the voters what you are giving them, and you spend a lot of time talking about your political opponents, you are basically indirectly canvassing for those political parties. And I've been saying the same thing to the opposition political parties, saying that if you launch your manifesto, focus on your manifesto and forget about the ANC. People know what the ANC has done. They also know what the ANC has not done. So don't do the canvassing for the ANC. Just tell the voters what you are going to do for them and how we are going to do that. Similarly, the ANC was supposed to have ignored this MK because they started on a wrong footing by saying that this is just a non-starter, it's not a force to be reckoned with, it's not a party to be worried about. The question was, there are already a number of new political parties. Why didn't you have an issue with all of them? Why not the MK? Is it not because you are scared of it? Those are some of the questions that people will maybe one day come back and try to address, which they've been refusing to address until now.
A media advisory has already been sent out. The ANC has now confirmed that they're going to be responding to this judgment at Luthuli House around 1 o'clock this afternoon. Given what's at stake, given the loss they've already suffered, I wonder what you reckon they should say.
If I were to advise them, I would say they must not call a media briefing on this matter. They must just wait for tomorrow and then focus on the Pietermaritzburg High Court case. That is the one in terms of which focuses on the patent. Even that one, of course, in my view, has no grounds because COPE has already set a precedent in 2009. The ANC went to court saying that COPE must not use that name because it is owned by the ANC. And the court ruled against the ANC, saying that you don't have any right over the name. And with regards to MK, they are saying that, in fact, on the 16th of December 1961, MK was formed as a military wing of the ANC, which is factually correct, which is historically correct. But the question is, was it only the ANC that was instrumental in the formation of MK? If the answer is in the negative, then we may then find the same result that we find in 2009. And then what does it do then to a political credibility? So if I were to advise them, I would say, no, they must just say, we have received the judgment, we respect the judgment and move on. Because if they try to reason and rationalize on this issue, I don't think it is going to do the party any good. If anything, the opposite will be true.
Yeah, look, the ANC, depending who you ask, may not be good at winning court cases, but again, no one is possibly more experienced at winning elections than the ANC. I think I can say that objectively, as a matter of fact. They've been in power since the dawn of our democracy. What I'm getting to is, whilst the ANC may be losing the battle when it comes to the litigation, they have a lot of experience in winning the battle on the ground. You know, often we talk about the final squeeze when the officials of the ANC are fanned throughout the country and are canvassing for votes. When it comes to that front, how well positioned do you reckon the governing party is to essentially repeat what they've done since we've gone to the elections in 1994?
You know, Putayanda, the ANC has not been winning the elections because it canvasses throughout the country. It has not been winning the elections because it has the strongest manifesto. But it has been winning the elections because it has footprints in all 9 provinces. That is one thing we have to give to the ANC. Besides the fact that it is the liberation movement, but it has also been able to have membership in all 9 provinces, including the Western Cape, where it handed over government to the DA due to its own wrongdoing and scoring its own goals. So that said, therefore, means that it is true that the ANC has been enjoying support. But the second factor that you must bring in is that the majority of the people who have been looking at the ANC as the liberation movement are getting old. The youngsters are no longer interested in who liberated us and so on, because they were born free anyway after 1994. So that analogy does not work for them. That narrative does not hold water for them. Instead, they are more aligned with other parties, your EFF, your DA, your many other parties, and they are also amenable to join any new political party. So as much as it is true that the ANC has been winning elections, and as much as it is true that even when it loses an election or it loses a ward for that matter, it still has the majority of votes. That is factually true, but then the political landscape has changed. We're having 115 political parties that will be contesting this election, which is unprecedented. On top of that, you have independent candidates. So that then changes the whole political spectrum, which means, therefore, all the things that have worked well for the ANC might not work for the party this time around, more especially after the formation of Mngomezulu, which is leaving a lot of politicians sleepless nights, not just the leadership of the ANC.
Yeah, of course. And speaking about the leadership of the ANC, and without conflating issues, Prof, I'm just notifying you and our viewers that we're waiting on standby for President Cyril Ramaphosa to speak at a completely different, unrelated event. It's the Biodiversity Summit, or Indaba, which is taking place. But I just thought I should sensitize you and our viewer that I might have to interrupt you at any point from this point onwards. But speaking about just how divergent the political landscape has become, I wonder if you reckon this is a good strategy from the part of opposition parties who may very well split the opposing vote, for lack of a better term, and inadvertently put the ANC in a good position. In other words, is it time to see a whole lot more alliances formed in the opposition if they want to consolidate whatever support they have against the ANC?
In all probability, Putayanda, that is the direction we're headed. Because as much as MK is enjoying support, I'm not convinced that it will have a landslide majority.
Right.
So which then means that there is a possibility of having a coalition. The same with the ANC. The ANC will definitely lose support, but it might not lose support enough for it to be written off. Then what it would mean in that case, it will have to identify certain parties that it could collude with or at least form a coalition with. Of course, there might be very few of those, but the reality is any political party has a potential to form a coalition government. Whether it's a grand coalition with bigger parties or it's a minority coalition with smaller parties, the reality is we might end up having a coalition government simply because the ANC will have lost its majority and all opposition parties would have not grown enough for them to unseat the ANC single-handedly, which will then mean that they'll have to come together and then remove the ANC from power. And that is a possibility.
Yeah, and given just how fast-moving everything is, one can only imagine the kind of backroom discussions that are now taking place. The ANC, as we've already spoken, has suffered a major blow in this particular court case. Is it worth continuing with tomorrow's litigation, do you reckon, given just how much more of a blow that could be to the governing party? I mean, I can already kind of hear the slogans from the MK party if, in fact, they go on to also win tomorrow's court case.
Putayanda, if the ANC were to come to people like myself and seek advice, my advice would be, you have lost this case, you have another case coming, you don't want to prejudge it, but for the sake of protecting your own integrity, do away with that case and then focus on canvassing for the election. That is the advice I would have given them. For the simple reason I've just stated earlier that when the case against COPE was dismissed, it was on the grounds that there were a number of other interested parties that participated in the formation of COPE. Similarly, as much as MK is associated with ANC, having been established on the 16th of December 1961, the reality is that it was not only the ANC that was instrumental in the formation of MK. Then what if the court decides that in the same manner it did in 2009 and says, okay, as much as you are associated with MK, but we are not the only party that was responsible for the formation of MK. Therefore, we have no patent right. Secondly, as much as you are arguing that MK belongs to you, the reality here is that you know for a fact that before the 1994 political dispensation, all liberation movements were disbanded, including APLA from PAC and also MK from the ANC. And therefore, it means those parties, those liberation movements no longer exist. Anyone who picks up the name from the dustbin and cleans it up and calls it a party is not committing any crime. So on which grounds are you then arguing that you have a patent right to that name? Those are some of the possibilities. I'm not a lawyer, but I'm just looking at these things from a distance. I'm saying these are some of the arguments that are likely to surface tomorrow. So is this something worth following? I don't think so. If I were the leadership of the ANC, I would withdraw the case and then just focus on canvassing, which is what the president of the ANC is doing very well, crisscrossing the country, coming to Kabeja, going to other places. That is what they should be focusing on, and not these court cases that are necessary in my view.
Yeah, speaking about seeing things from a distance, I mean, I think the conversation that has been ongoing in the background has always been about whether or not we are seeing the last kicks of a dying horse. This idea of this liberation movement having dominance over the political spectrum is now behind us. And these are the signs, the last minute litigation, the arguments that aren't thought through. I mean, at this point, in this particular case, the Electoral Court said that the ANC's arguments around the supplementation of the MK party's registration is superficial. I mean, that is really scathing. Essentially, my question to you is, to what extent do you agree with that? That the ANC is now clasping at straws because it's reaching the end, quite frankly, of whatever foothold it had over South Africa's political landscape?
Putayanda, to answer your question, one does not have to look at the outcome of the case today as an isolated matter. Look at the chain of events from the 2016 general election, local government election, 2019 general election, and 2021 local government election. The ANC and the DA have been on the downward spiral. Only parties like the EFF, the IFP, Freedom Front Plus have been on the upward trajectory. So it means, therefore, that even if you take today's outcome out of the equation and you take tomorrow's case out of the equation, the reality is the party is on the decline. So then if the party is on the decline, then it means that it has to do anything and everything to sustain itself and then, of course, to remain in office. Then having said that, The other issue also that people are considering is that is the point I made earlier on, that we have too many political parties this time around, and therefore that too means that there is something that is unprecedented, which will then force the ANC to do anything and everything. But what I disagree with is what the DA has done, saying that because they suspect that the ANC might do anything to remain in power, they therefore felt it necessary to contact a government of another country in the name of the US. That was totally wrong. You don't do that just because we are speculating. You still have to stick to protocol. Up to now, the ANC is the governing party. So if you want to communicate with any government, you have to do it through the ANC government or through the leadership of the ANC. You cannot do it as an opposition party. It doesn't work like that. So as much as the assumption that the ANC might be equivalent to a dying horse which will do anything and everything, there are certain things that I disagree with, that we should not lose focus. Let us still respect the ANC as the governing party now, but still respectfully tell them you are on the decline and you are on the verge of exiting the seat unless you do A, B, C, D. If they don't listen, then it's their problem. If they listen, they can do better.
All right, and I suppose time will tell which of the two they choose. Professor Bheki Mngomezulu, as always, thank you for your insights. Really do appreciate your speaking to us. Professor Mngomezulu is, of course, a political analyst.